Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Bees are an essential part of our natural ecosystem and food systems. But as we've been learning over the past 15 years or so, bee populations are on the decline. The increased use of herbicides and insecticides, along with disease and habitat loss, have all contributed to the loss of bees, according to scientists. In that context, the University of Vermont created the Vermont Bee Lab. It is dedicated to the protection of pollinators through research, education, and outreach. Across the Fence's Ben Willis stopped by the lab to learn about its diagnostic services.
In Jeffords Hall on the UVM campus in Burlington, there is a small research and outreach laboratory dedicated to the protection of pollinators.
At the Vermont Bee Lab, our mission is to protect both wild and managed pollinators. So we do a lot of work with supporting beekeepers throughout the state and performing diagnostic services for beekeepers to make informed disease management decisions.
So why is the work of the Vermont Bee Lab so important?
We use our diagnostic services and kind of our resources and capabilities at the lab not only to support hobbyist beekeepers throughout the state, but also commercial operations as we gain a better understanding of and kind of quantify pathogen loads. We can support them to make better selections for breeding purposes and improve honeybee stock across the state to mitigate colony loss for our commercial operations and for our hobbyist beekeepers.
The Vermont Bee Lab was created by UVM Assistant Professor Samantha Alger, who is also the current director of the lab.
Samantha Alger started the Vermont Bee Lab as a way to protect both wild and managed pollinators. So currently we have been targeting Vermont beekeepers as a way to reduce pathogen spread into native bee populations. We found that both viruses and other pathogens are able to spread from honeybees to wild bees of all species. So this is a really great way for us to kind of identify and understand the distribution of disease across the state and understand how we can better protect wild pollinators as well. Here we are processing diagnostic samples that Vermont beekeepers have submitted to our lab to test for both varroa mites and nosema. Varroa mites are an ectoparasite that inflict honeybees by feeding off the fat bodies of the bees and weakening the colony as a whole. It's a major issue for beekeepers that we'd like to test for. We also test for nosema, and this is an endoparasite that kind of sucks the nutrients out of the bee and is often kind of unknown as a disease in a colony, so it's important for us to identify spores using microscopy for the beekeeper.
So how does someone go about submitting a sample?
So any beekeeper can submit samples free of charge to the Vermont Bee Lab if you have your own bees and are looking to evaluate the health of your bees. We have drop boxes across the state, so you can find on our website our local drop box location that you can submit your sample to. You can also ship it directly to our lab. We ask that you fill out a submission form with your sample so we have some information when we go to diagnose your bees. And then you'll receive a diagnostic report within 2 weeks after submitting your samples.
Part of the lab's mission is to provide education and public outreach to inform beekeepers, stakeholders, and the general public on the future of bees and beekeeping. I'll be checking back in with the lab soon for a closer look at some of their research and outreach programs. At the University of Vermont, I'm Ben Willis with Across the Fence.
For more information about the Bee Lab, check the website, vermontbeelab.com. The University of Vermont Extension is celebrating its 110th anniversary. Since 1913, Extension has served the people of Vermont and our region. Extension service comes in many forms, from hands-on learning and practical information to research-based educational programs. In staying true to its mission of helping Vermonters put knowledge to work, the Agroecology Extension Summer Research Fellowship was started in 2021. Keith Silva tells us more.
Have you seen any adults at all?
I've seen like a couple adults.
There's no place Charlotte Smith would rather be this summer than in Vermont, looking for bugs.
You see something new every day, and I learn about what a new bug is, like every time I scout.
Whoa.
Along with raising her entomological acumen, Smith has figured out a few things about herself.
Being outside, like it made me realize like I don't think I ever want to have an office job. I just want to like look at bugs on farms. I'm learning and I'm also helping people, and it's just like seeing how like small things like looking at a plant can like make a difference for farmers. There you go. Look at
This scouting work is part of a first-of-its-kind program at the University of Vermont called the Agroecology Extension Summer Research Fellowship, AX Fellowship for short. It's a 10-week program, and participants are paid a stipend. The effort is part of the Agroecology and Livelihoods Collaborative, a partnership between UVM Extension and the Plant and Soil Science Department. Scott Lewins serves as the AX Fellowship's extension coordinator.
There's teaching, there's research, and there's extension. So the AX Fellowship is it is the intersection of those three things. It's students getting learning opportunities, doing research, while also providing that farmer-friendly outreach at the end.
Vic Izzo is the other half of the AX Fellowship's leadership team. He works as the program's educational coordinator.
What this AX Fellowship allows us to do, it's not just about being an intern, right? You can go out and work as an internship during the summer. This gives us, because we have a whole cohort of students, where each week the students get to learn skills, agriculture, working with farmers, relationship building, all that, but then they also get the opportunity to reflect with a cohort of other students where they can actually kind of integrate that knowledge, and then finally at the end they have to give a deliverable that allows them to perhaps share with their families, share with other academics, share with farmers. And so this process, really in a nutshell, is kind of what extension agents do.
When it comes to agriculture, the focus is production and yields. It kind of has to be. Agroecology attempts to put less eggs in that basket, so to speak, and look at the bigger picture. Izzo and Lewins teach students to take a systems approach, from the root to the fruit, and from the farmer to the consumer, and everywhere in between.
I think there's a tendency for researchers to think up cool ideas and questions based upon agriculture in these bubbles, even with undergraduate or graduate students, with no interaction with farmers. We are directly going to farmers, as opposed to thinking in my box. And I can think of a lot of good questions. They have the best questions because they're out on the ground and farming.
There haven't really been many eggs on this side.
The students scout for pests and plant diseases on several sites throughout the state. Their findings go into a database for the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association. Growers then make management decisions based on this data.
It's not like just doing a book report, right, where they find a bunch of information and then report it out, right? This is usable information that, in fact, the Vermont Vegetable and Berry Growers Association is funding part of that because it was so valuable, such valuable information for them.
I feel like you don't really ever see the eggs on the top.
This kind of work is known as applied research. The direct benefit to farmers is why Ashley Pearson signed on to the program.
The agroecology is so broad, so I was really excited to experience it firsthand and get more experience out in the field and connecting with farmers. Building relationships, I think, for anything is super important. So to be able to be in the field with these farmers daily has been super amazing, and talking with them and them just really getting into what they do and having them explain what their day-to-day life is like is really cool.
The AX Fellowship provides students with knowledge that can't be learned in a classroom.
In the classroom, it's a lot of showing pictures and just telling. Experiencing is so much different because you really can't capture everything in a picture or even a video. So yeah, being out in the field is it's super cool because you're really learning and you can repeat it and do it again and teach other people. So yeah, it's way different than being in the classroom.
As a student, I think sometimes, especially undergrad, people would be like, oh, just reach out to your faculty about getting involved in research. But then you need to have prior research experience. So this is kind of a way to get research experience and feel more comfortable talking to teachers that you probably wouldn't have felt like going up to at the end of a 3-hour, 200-person lecture class. I think experiencing it and just doing it makes you appreciate what it actually means, because you can just make notes and kind of understand why things are important, but actually being a part of the process is how I learn.
These are experiential learning opportunities, to use jargon, high impact learning opportunities that students just want to do. You can take a class online or in person, you can sit in a classroom, but I hear repeatedly from students and academics also say what students really crave is these experiential learning opportunities.
Agroecology is the study of relationships between people, places, and things. What students experience in this program is what binds all those relationships together. Trust.
If you don't have a relationship of trust, adoption of anything that you're testing is never going to happen. And the same thing with students. If you don't have a relationship of trust, you're never going to get them to hear you. So education is built on trust, adoption is built on trust. I basically think that everything's built on relationships.
This experience marks a time in Smith's life that she'll learn from and always remember.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of nymphs there. I never thought that I'd be so interested in bugs or want to even explore that in the future, and now that's something that I think is really cool. I just learned a lot, and I think I'll always remember this summer and summer of 2021, I just was outside in Vermont visiting beautiful farms and making cool connections and learning a lot.
Scouting for bugs with colleagues to help farmers grow food to feed the community. That's what you call fellowship. In Burlington, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Thank you, Keith. And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.